Amidst pristine Pacific coastline and merely a few miles from the world's largest redwood forest lies Fort Bragg, California, home to the California Western Railroad. But chances are you probably know this line by its more familiar and somewhat more odoriferous name, the skunk train.
The nickname skunk originated in 1925 when the railroad acquired its single-unit self-propelled rail cars. We call them motor cars. They had gas-powered engines, pot-bellied stoves that burnt crude oil for heat, and the combination of the fumes, the old-timers said that these little buses were like skunks. You could always smell them before you could see them. People don't know us by California Western Railroad anymore. I mean, from that point on, you know, people really have known us by the skunk train.
40 of the crookedest miles of track you'll find anywhere run from the Pacific coast through majestic redwood forest and scenic mountain meadows in Northern California. And every twist and turn inspires views more awesome than the last. Originally built as a logging railroad in 1885, the Redwood Route hauled timber from the rugged forest to the coastal sawmills. Former woodsman Dennis Belacy worked for decades in those forests before becoming a conductor on the skunk train.
We did logging in the late 60s out here, where we actually used our train to haul the lumber in out of Willits, on the Willits side all the way to Fort Bragg. And we would load the logs onto the railroad cars at that time when they had the freight cars here, bring them into the mill, and then they'd mill them into lumber here. But we had always had a good working relationship with the railroad, and it was a pretty exciting job.
But the railroad was much more than just a vehicle for moving logs. It was a lifeline for those that lived in these rugged hills. Running from Fort Bragg to connect with the Northwestern Pacific at Willits, the line has a long history.
The railroad was founded in 1885 by a lumberman from Wisconsin, C.R. Johnson. He moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area and came up north and discovered the coastal redwoods of Northern California, and particularly here in Mendocino County. One of the challenges was not only getting the lumber from the forest back to his sawmill, and that, of course, created a need for a railroad, but was also getting the lumber, once it was finished, out of the area.
Today, the skunk train is a tourist line, hauling visitors boarding at a historic station on the California coast or for some 40 miles away at the eastern portal into the redwoods.
The trip is a scenic trip. Most of our passengers do the half-day trip, which is from either Fort Bragg or Willits down to the midpoint of the railroad known as North Spur.
The Wabash Cannonball!
It's a scenic ride along the Noyo River Canyon, zigzagging back and forth across trestles, 40 miles of railroad, 30 bridges, 2 tunnels, and you're at the base of the forest floor. So you're surrounded by trees, you're about 30 feet above the river the entire journey, and it's absolutely spectacular.
Of course, the tunnel's the big thing. You know, the kids are out there and parents and everything that go through that tunnel, then come out there. When you come out, and it just opens up, and it's so beautiful out there. And the redwood trees, they just can't get enough of them, especially people that have never ever seen them. And the entire ride and the noise of the steam train and bouncing around and everything, it's just fantastic to see people really enjoying themselves out here.
The route is a rugged one, and in one instance, the railroad takes over 8.5 miles to cover just a mile of straight line distance.
Well, this is land that really is only accessible by rail. It's all private land, so there's certainly no biking or pedestrian corridors. I think that that's part of the mystique of what makes the skunk so unique, is that you're in true wilderness area that is only accessible by this train. And you're seeing forest land that really is, other than having been logged in some cases, there are still virgin stands of timber out here. And not very many footsteps have traipsed through this forest.
While motive power has changed from the early days of the railroad, there is still plenty to offer.
So the locomotive right behind me today is engine 45. It's a 1924 built Baldwin steam locomotive. It was built in Eddystone, Pennsylvania. It's a 282 Mikado, so it has a shorter wheelbase to navigate the severe curvature on this railroad particularly. The railroad also has a fleet of GP9 diesel locomotives that were built in 1955, and we have 2 rail buses, a 1925 Edwards rail car that's painted in the original skunk colors, and then we have a 1935. The passenger coaches that we operate for the most part are either Southern Pacific Harriman-style coaches that were used in and around the San Francisco Bay Area on the shorter commute trains, and then we also have some passenger coaches from the Blue Mountain and Reading Railroad out in Pennsylvania that now operate here. I think one of the unique things about the equipment that we operate on the Skunk is the open-aired observation cars, where passengers can go outside with no obstructions between them and nature and enjoy the scenic beauty of the railroad.
Whoa, look at that big cloud of smoke!
It requires a lot of maintenance, repair, and effort to keep the railroad operating smoothly.
Oh, it's a huge responsibility. 40 miles of mountain railroad. We're a standard gauge railroad, which is a little unheard of from a logging railroad standpoint. It's a constant challenge to maintain this railroad. Our crews are out here on a daily basis doing what's needed to maintain this railroad to federal standards. Tunnel number 1 was completed in 1893, and last year, 120 years into its existence, we had a cave-in on the inside of the tunnel. By the time we got crews mobilized and equipment mobilized, the cave-in had occurred. It took us 4 months to get the tunnel clear, and our operations were severely curtailed as a result of that. It gave the railroad an opportunity to get out there and really see how many fans and supporters we have from all across the world. We had supporters from as far away as Hong Kong contribute to the rebuilding efforts of Tunnel Number 1, and of course Save the Redwoods League, which is a locally based conservation group. They stepped forward to fund the balance of the project so that we could get service restored to the railroad.
It is that sort of crucial local and worldwide support that continues to help make the Skunk Train one of the more successful standard gauge tourist lines in the country, and its value to the community is equally as critical.
The railroad's an integral part of this community and has been for 129 years. And as a result of that, we have a great responsibility to the community. We are the single largest economic driver in this area. We're responsible for carrying in excess of 50,000 passengers per year. And as a result of that, the railroad plays a vital role in economic prosperity, if you will.
The railroad is proof that scenery and railroading never go out of style. Operating for over 125 years, the Skunk Train is still creating memories in these California hills.
Good morning. Welcome aboard. How are we doing today?
People come to Mendocino County for its scenic beauty. They come here because redwoods are something that you can't find everywhere. And when you couple the nostalgia of being able to get on board the back of a train that we so lovingly call the Skunk and be transported through time, you really are transported through time.
The history's all here, and then when you go out and the conductor tells you what it is out there, and it kind of brings back that feeling of the old days out there.
Part of our mission is to make sure that things like this exist in future generations. You know, the history is here. The groundwork has been laid. It's our job to become good stewards and to keep it alive, and really to be entrusted with that